How do you top one of the greatest games ever made? How do you begin to make a sequel to a game that is as close to perfection as anyone could hope? By not making a sequel, but remaking the game using new technology to improve the original in almost every way. Do you know the saying, if something's better than this, I don't want to know about it? That's how I feel about certain games. Resident Evil 2, Perfect Dark, Half-Life 2, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, and Metal Gear Solid 2 is high up on that list as well. If Escape from LA is a remake of Escape from New York, then Metal Gear Solid 2 in many ways is a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1. The story is a sequel, but the game is a remake. Before I go too much further, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Raiden. Fans of Metal Gear Solid couldn't have been less enamoured by Raiden. He is the anti-Snake. The only way Kojima could have made Raiden less like Snake is if his codename was Riding Alcox, and instead of rescuing his targets, he met them in poorly lit rooms and played touchy-feely with them in the dark. And instead of fighting guards, he got his kicks by letting them pee on him. Wait. But I have a confession to make. I like Raiden. That's right, I said it. I don't care who knows about it, I'm sick of living this lie. You can unsubscribe to my channel if you want, but first let me explain myself. I can't relate to Snake. I don't like conflict, and maybe that's why I like stealth games over action games. It's maybe why I like survival horror, because you avoid combat in those games. But I can relate to Raiden. Like him, the only experience of combat I have is digital. To understand Snake's character, you should really watch Escape from LA, because that's who the character's based on. Snake takes a while to warm up to. Even when I watched Escape from LA for the first time, it wasn't until near the end of the movie I was actually rooting for him. From a gameplay point of view, Raiden is practically the same character as Snake. The only difference I found was a slightly different animation jumping over a railing. I should also mention that if you get the Substance version of Metal Gear Solid 2 or the HD remake on the 360, you get to play as Snake lots. There's a whole section called Snake Tales that lets you play story sections as Snake. And there's hours of VR that you get to play as Snake too. So yes, you didn't get to play the main story as Snake, but there's still plenty of times where you do get to play as Snake. But nothing I can say about Raiden will change your opinion. You either hate him or love him, or like me, you recognise that he isn't real, he's just an arrangement of polygons that doesn't affect gameplay whoever he is. A slight difference in pixel arrangement on screen never really bothered me too much, but I do think it's sad that the Raiden factor really clouded people's judgment about this game. It wasn't until years afterwards that I went on the internet to find that people hated it just as much as they did. A question I get asked is, what is your favourite Metal Gear Solid game? And I completely understand when I hear people's favourite is Metal Gear Solid 3 or Metal Gear Solid 1, or the remake of one on the GameCube, but my favourite is Metal Gear Solid 2. There's just something about it that resonates with me. On the album Martyr Loser King, Saul Williams said, "How can I describe it? It's a feeling." That is in some ways how I feel about Metal Gear Solid 2. I could tell you how I love everything about it. The music, the gameplay, the story, but you can't experience what it's like to be me playing it. So instead I'm just going to list cold hard facts about Metal Gear Solid 2 and what it added to the series. Its lasting impact, we'll call it. But I'll also list some things about MGS2 that aren't in later games that I believe should be. MGS2 isn't as popular with Metal Gear Solid fans, and if any of them are watching this, I hope this list makes you reevaluate your opinion of the game, or at least acknowledge that it did a lot to cement the foundations for future Metal Gear games. So let's start the list with non-lethal guns. Metal Gear Solid 1 had a silenced pistol, but never a silent tranquilizer pistol. The key here is that you could silently kill guards using the guns in Metal Gear Solid 1, but you couldn't silently tranquilize them with guns. This is something we see in almost every Metal Gear Solid game since 2. Yes, you could silently choke guards or knock guards out in Metal Gear Solid 1, but you couldn't take them out at range with any weapons non-lethally. Hold up, this seems like such a small element, but it gives so much depth to the encounters. Not only can you hold them up, but you need to keep them under control. If a guard thinks that you're not going to shoot, or he has a chance to reach for his gun, he'll take it. That is unless you're pointing a stinger rocket at him, they'll never reach for the gun in that case. But this small element is a really helpful tool in sneaking around levels, and I can't imagine Metal Gear Solid without it. Bodies don't disappear. In Metal Gear Solid, when you knock out someone, they don't just disappear. This was something I first seen in Hitman. It means you have to deal with the consequences of knocking someone out. namely a body that other guards could find. The game's like, you knocked him out, now you deal with it. Acrobatic moves and style. This may seem trivial, but Metal Gear Solid 2 brought a whole level of style to the series. I could watch that move all day. It has to be one of the coolest moves ever in gaming, and I never get sick of watching it. It's probably one of the reasons I don't dislike Raiden. He brought a level of style to the game, but without altering the gameplay. It even makes Snake look a little bit dated. Almost like when you play as Snake and jump over a railing, you're watching the fake person ninjas from Bowfinger. The bosses. This is where Metal Gear Solid 2 fleshed out the characters from Metal Gear Solid 1. Revolver Ocelot, known as Shalashaska. Now that's quite possibly the coolest name I've ever heard. Ocelot was a cool boss in Metal Gear Solid 1, but nothing compared to how cool he was in Metal Gear Solid 2. In many ways the bosses in MGS2 mirror the bosses in MGS1, and for good reason. But like many things in this game, I think it was done best here. Big shell, mother base. Hell, you could even say big orange structure out at sea. A lot of people I talk to say they hate the setting of Metal Gear Solid 2, but hate it or love it, it became the focal point for the later games in the series. Peace Walker had this base facility, and this is footage from my Xbox 360 version of Peace Walker. And in Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain you actually got to explore this base and actually walk around it. Even if you hate this setting in the later games, the original idea from it came from Metal Gear Solid 2, as did the foundations for a lot of things in the series. Now let's talk about some of the things I liked in Metal Gear Solid 2 that were removed in the later games. The camera. The cinematic camera was lost shortly after Metal Gear Solid 2. In Metal Gear Solid 3, Kojima toyed with the third person camera view versus the cinematic camera view, and eventually the third person view won. And after Metal Gear Solid 3, every game has had an over the shoulder camera angle. I feel like when I'm older, my grandkids will visit me in a nursing home, and I'll say to them, you know, back in my day, every game didn't have an over the shoulder camera angle. I wish more games had a fixed camera or cinematic camera. And they would say to me, that's nice granddad, did you take your pills today? I know I sound like a broken record on camera angles in my videos, but look at this footage of the tanker in Metal Gear Solid 2. This action scene is greatly improved by a mixture of very well placed fixed camera and cinematic camera angles. Not only does it look so much more dramatic and exciting, but it makes you feel like you're watching a movie while playing the game. I feel like with an over the shoulder camera angle, you become the player. You are Snake, you're no longer an observer. And like I said, if anything I'm Raiden, I'm just an observer watching what's happening. The rations. The rations in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 act like a bottled fairy in The Legend of Zelda. When your health goes down to 0, as long as you have a ration equipped, it will replenish your health and you won't die. Just like how the fairies bring you back to life in Zelda. The reason I love this health system is because it keeps you in the action. You don't need to worry about constantly taking health or constantly going into your menus. It never breaks the gameplay, so you can continue fighting, but there is still quite a large penalty for taking damage. A complaint some people had with the Phantom Pain is that it had regenerating health, and I am one of those people. I can see why regenerating health works in some games like Gears of War. I think it works quite well. But does every game now have to have regenerating health? Quick reload. In Gears of War there was an active reload, in Battlefield 2 Modern Combat there was quick sniping, in Metal Gear Solid there was a quick reload. This is something that adds skill to a game, which is good in my book. To quickly reload in Metal Gear Solid 2 you just equipped and unequipped your gun. It cuts out the animation for reloading and it adds an extra dimension to the gameplay. Sadly this ability was lost in Metal Gear Solid 5, but a lot of my favourite things were removed in 5, but that's for a different video. VR. Strip a game back to its basics and what are you left with? Gameplay. Pure, unadulterated gameplay. And that's what VR mode is. There are two types of difficulty in this mode. There are the grind levels, and then there are the ones that test your insanity and make you realise just how bad you are at the game. There's no story, there's only an objective. It's the polar opposite of what the main games like to play. As much as I love the story in Metal Gear Solid 2, sometimes I just want to play the game. And that's what you get here. I can really zone out playing the VR missions. All you get is a little bit of information at the start of each level, and then you're on to the next challenge. I really wish this mode wasn't dropped from the later games in the series, and I would happily pay for this as a separate game in itself. Detail. The detail is enormous. This game was made at a time where it was really exciting to explore every inch of a room you just entered. Nowadays it feels like games have just stuck to the model of, oh, let's stick a collectible on each level, just for the sake of it, and it's become way too overused. In Metal Gear Solid 2 there were fun things to discover for no reason other than it was fun to do. Even Metal Gear Solid 5 added generic and pointless collectibles, almost mocking the uniqueness of the posters in Metal Gear Solid 2. I remember playing Metal Gear Solid 2 with friends and finding new hidden posters in the lockers. It wasn't something the game asked us to do, it was just something we did for fun. But in Metal Gear Solid 5 it feels really forced. So there you have it, there were some of my favourite things from Metal Gear Solid 2. There are way too many to pack into one video. And I like the game so much, I think it would be a good candidate for a let's play where I could actually go into more detail about other things I like about it. I think it gets a lot of undeserved hate, purely because people can't see past a character change. You can play as Snake lots in the game, especially in the VR and in Snake Tales. But this is just my experience with the game. I'd love to hear what yours is. Thanks for watching and see you next time.